I always believed birthdays were just another day. Another day to quietly exist, to get through it, and to make sure no one noticed how much I was really hurting. For as long as I could remember, birthdays had become an afterthought. No phone calls, no surprises, just me, a quiet dinner and a cake I'd end up eating alone. It wasn't always this way. There was a time when birthdays were filled with joy, laughter, and people I loved. But that was before they all left. I didn't expect much this year, but I never could have predicted what would happen next. A stranger's letter delivered to my door that night would change everything I thought I knew about myself, about the people who had walked out of my life, and the secret I had kept hidden for far too long. Stay with me as I tell you about the night that started like any other, and ended with a revelation I never saw coming. My birthday had always been a quiet affair. I suppose it was fitting considering the state of my life these days. I woke up early, as usual, the sunlight slipping through the blinds to greet me. There were no balloons, no cake waiting, and certainly no excited calls or texts from family. It had been like this for the past few years. I never asked for much, just a little acknowledgement that I was still here. But it was always the same. I got up, made myself a cup of tea and began the day like any other. I even set the table for one, as if pretending someone else would be there. I baked myself a small cake, lemon, my favorite. I didn't even bother to light a candle. I didn't need to make a wish. I stopped believing in those a long time ago. The kitchen smelled sweet, and the silence that followed was deafening. I tried to keep myself busy. There was cleaning to do, laundry, bills to pay, things that didn't require too much of my heart, things I could do on autopilot. But there was that nagging feeling, the one that I tried to bury every year when my birthday rolled around. The feeling of being forgotten. I dialed my daughter's number. The phone rang a few times, but it went to voicemail. I left a quick message, trying to sound upbeat, telling her I missed her and hoped she was doing well, but I knew better than to expect a return call. She had her own life now. I wasn't a part of it. By noon I had already finished my cake, and the tears I had been holding back finally slipped free. It wasn't for the cake. It wasn't for the fact that I was alone. It was the deep ache of being invisible, forgotten by the one person who used to look up to me, the one person who used to need me. The rest of the day dragged on, each minute heavier than the last. The hours seemed to stretch, but no one came, no surprise visits, no cards, not even a text. I spent most of it sitting by the window, watching life move around me, watching others go on with their celebrations. I saw Mrs. Martin from down the street with her children, balloons in tow, laughing as they walked into her house. Then there was Mark, who always remembered birthdays. He brought his mom a bouquet every year without fail. As they walked past my window, I caught his eyes. He smiled politely, a smile that didn't reach his eyes, before turning to his family. It wasn't a malicious thing, it was just indifference. That's when I realized I wasn't just alone today. I had been alone for much longer than I cared to admit. I picked up my phone again, hesitated, then called my son, Jack. The dial tone echoed in my ear like it always did, until his voicemail picked up. Hey Mom, sorry I can't talk right now. Leave a message after the beep. I ended the call before I could leave a message, just like every other time. He had his own family now, his own life, and I had become a distant memory, one he wasn't eager to revisit. I stared at the blank screen for a long time, wondering when my life had started to feel like a waiting game. When had I become someone who waited for calls that never came, for visits that never happened? But I wasn't about to cry, not today. Today I would stay strong. Today I would hold on to whatever pride I had left. The afternoon passed like the morning, slow and uneventful. By 5, I gave up pretending I wasn't expecting anything. I put on a pot of coffee, sliced myself another piece of cake, and sat in the chair by the window. This time I didn't try to force a smile. I didn't try to pretend. I just let myself feel the weight of my loneliness. It was then that I heard the knock. At first I thought it was just another one of those well-meaning neighbors. Maybe one of them had forgotten something and was just dropping it by. But the knock came again, louder this time, more insistent. I set my coffee cup down on the side table, took a deep breath, and walked toward the door. When I opened it I didn't expect to see anyone I recognized. Instead there was a man standing on my porch, dressed in a dark jacket, and carrying a small, somewhat bulky package. His face was unfamiliar, and he looked at me as though he was unsure of why he was there. "Delivery for Miss Harriet Reynolds," he said, his voice steady and polite. "That's me," I replied, surprised. I hadn't ordered anything, and I was sure I hadn't expected a delivery. But the man didn't seem to be in a hurry. He held out the package, still unsure of himself. "I'm sorry for the confusion. I'm a bit behind on my rounds today," he explained. I wasn't supposed to stop here, but the address matched the one on the slip. "You're Miss Reynolds, correct?" "Yes, that's me," I said, still a bit confused, but I took the package from him. The man nodded, and before I could thank him, he was already turning to leave. He didn't even ask if I wanted a signature. Just like that, he was gone. I closed the door behind me, my hands trembling as I set the package down on the hallway table. The letter in my hand was thick, sealed and marked with an official-looking logo I didn't recognize. The handwriting on the envelope was neat, formal and unfamiliar, but something about the weight of it made me uneasy. I ripped it open without hesitation. Inside there was a single letter, printed in black ink, along with a pamphlet. My eyes scanned the contents, and my heart skipped a beat. The letter read, "Dear Miss Harriet Reynolds, we hope this letter finds you well. We are writing to confirm your recent inquiry and reservation for your placement at Rosewood Manor, a premier independent living facility. Your move-in date has been scheduled for next Monday, June 7th, 2025. Enclosed you will find a list of required documents, and our next steps for a smooth transition into your new home. We trust this facility will provide the care, comfort and convenience you deserve. We look forward to welcoming you to Rosewood Manor. Sincerely, the Rosewood Manor admissions team." The letter felt like a slap. I read it again, slowly, just to make sure I wasn't missing something. I felt a surge of panic, my heart raced, and I suddenly couldn't breathe. This wasn't a brochure, this wasn't an offer, it was a confirmation, a scheduled move-in. I was being sent away, quietly, without my consent. Without any warning, I stared at the letter, the words on the page swimming in front of me. It felt as though the room was closing in. Rosewood Manor, it sounded so official, so polished. I had never heard of it. My hands shook as I reached for the pamphlet. The images inside were all smiles, tidy rooms, elderly people sipping tea in cozy chairs, looking out at manicured gardens. But none of that mattered. What mattered was the reality behind this letter. I wasn't being invited to live in some lovely retirement community for my own comfort. No, this was a well-executed plan to remove me from my own life. To strip me of the one thing that had remained constant in my world, my home. I read the letter again. My name was there along with Jack's, and a list of the details about my medical history, my medications, and a move-in date that was already set in stone. I wasn't being asked, I was being told. I dropped the pamphlet back into the envelope, my fingers still trembling. I didn't know what to do. My stomach twisted into a knot. I turned toward the kitchen, my head spinning, searching for something to ground me. The kettle had begun to whistle again, but I didn't feel like tea. I didn't feel like anything. I didn't know when it had started, when my life had shifted from something I could control to something others were making decisions about. But I knew one thing for sure. This wasn't just a misunderstanding. This was deliberate. I opened the drawer by the kitchen counter, where I kept all the important papers. The insurance, my will, property deeds, anything I might need. But as I went through them, my mind kept returning to one question. How could Jack have done this to me? How could my own son, the man I had raised, the man I had given everything to, make a decision like this without even consulting me? I picked up the phone. I dialed Jack's number, my fingers feeling clumsy against the keys. The phone rang once, twice, 3 times. I almost hung up. Maybe this was a mistake. But just as I was about to end the call, Jack picked up. "Hey Mom," he said, his voice casual, almost too casual. "How's your day going?" I looked at the letter in my hands. The letter that confirmed my exile. I took a deep breath, trying to keep my voice steady. "Jack," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "What is this? What's this letter about Rosewood Manor? Why didn't you tell me about this?" There was silence on the other end. I could hear him breathing, his voice suddenly faltering. "Mom, it's It's just for your own good. For my own good, I repeated, the words tasting bitter in my mouth. You make decisions about my life, without asking me, without even telling me, without giving me a choice. I could hear him shift in his seat. Mom, we've been talking about this for a while now. Rachel and I have been looking into it. We just want to make sure you're taken care of. I felt my heart pound in my chest. Taken care of. I'm not an old woman who needs to be looked after. I'm not some burden for you to move around like furniture. I've been fine. I've been taking care of myself, and I'm not going anywhere. I waited for him to speak, but there was only silence. When he finally spoke again, his voice sounded strained, as though he were holding back something he didn't want to say. Mom, you've been getting forgetful. We just want you to be somewhere safe, where you can get the care you need. Forgetful, I shot back, my voice rising. You're not the one who forgot about me. I don't need care, Jack. I need respect. I need you to stop making decisions behind my back. I need you to remember that I'm still here. I'm still your mother, and I don't want to go anywhere. I heard him take a shaky breath, and for a moment I thought, maybe I'd reached him. Maybe he would understand. But instead he said, we've already made the arrangements. It's done, Mom. That was it. The final blow. They had already decided. They had already planned my future for me, as if I were a problem to be solved. I hung up the phone, my hand still gripping it, but it felt like an anchor pulling me into a sea of confusion. How could he say those things to me? How could he brush me off like that? The same son who once sat at my kitchen table, who once needed me for everything, was now dismissing me like I was some sort of inconvenience. I stood there for a moment, lost in the noise of my thoughts, when there came another knock at the door. It wasn't a delivery driver this time. I knew that for sure. I wasn't expecting anyone else. I opened the door, my heart still racing, but when I saw who was standing there, everything stopped. It was Ava, my granddaughter. She looked up at me with those big eyes that held both innocence and the weight of the world. She was standing there on my doorstep, her face pale and full of something I couldn't quite read. Grandma, can I come in? She asked softly, her voice filled with uncertainty. I stepped aside without a word, my heart suddenly lighter, for the first time that day. Ava stepped into the house quietly, her footsteps hesitant on the hardwood floor. The familiar scent of my home, cinnamon dust, and the faint tang of old wood, seemed to comfort her, but there was something else in the air, something thicker. It was like we both knew what had just happened, what I had just uncovered. The truth was out now, and there was no going back. I led her to the living room, where the silence hung heavily between us. She didn't speak right away. Instead she took a deep breath, as if gathering the strength to say something she had been holding in for a long time. Grandma. Her voice cracked as she said my name, and I could see her eyes beginning to well up. I don't know what to say. I should have told you sooner. But I didn't know how to make it stop. I sat down on the couch, and patted the space next to me. She didn't hesitate this time, sitting beside me, but she kept her hands folded in her lap, like she was unsure whether she could reach out. I'm glad you came, I said, my voice steady but soft. I didn't want her to feel like she had to apologize. This wasn't her fault, but I don't understand. What happened, Ava? Why didn't you speak up sooner? She looked at me, her eyes filled with a mixture of sadness and regret. I tried, Grandma. I tried so hard, but every time I said something they shut me down. Mom and Dad, she trailed off, unable to finish the sentence, but I could see the pain in her eyes. I didn't need her to explain. I already knew. It was Rachel, of course. It was always Rachel. She had always been the one pulling the strings, the one making the decisions. She was the one who had orchestrated this. And Jack, my son? He had always been so easily swayed by her. But Ava, my sweet granddaughter, had always been different. She was the one who saw through the charade. She was the one who knew what was happening, but she had been too afraid to stand up to them. You shouldn't have had to keep quiet, I said, my heart aching for her. You were just a kid, Ava. You didn't deserve to be stuck in the middle of this. I know, Grandma. I know, she whispered. I'm so sorry. I reached out and touched her hand. There's nothing to apologize for. I'm just glad you're here now. She gave me a small shaky smile, but there was still a cloud of guilt hovering over her. I should have been stronger. I should have told you what was going on. No, Ava, you did what you could, and you're here now. That's all that matters. I paused, giving her a moment to collect herself. But what did you overhear? What did they say? She hesitated, but then the words came tumbling out, as if they had been waiting to escape. It's everything, Grandma. Everything about the house, about the will, about the retirement home. They were talking about how they could move you out, and put you in that place without you even knowing. They said it would be easier for everyone, that it was for your own good. But I didn't believe it. I knew it wasn't right. It wasn't for your good, Grandma. It was for their own convenience. They just want the house. I felt the weight of her words settle on me, the final piece of the puzzle clicking into place. Rachel had always hated this house. She had always talked about how it was too old, too much of a hassle, and now Jack, my own son, was too blinded by her ambition to see that he was betraying me. Ava didn't know what to say next, so she just sat there beside me, quietly. I could see the uncertainty in her eyes, the fear of what might happen next. But I wasn't afraid, not anymore. I wasn't going to let them take everything from me. Not my home, not my dignity, and certainly not my power. I turned to her, my voice steady. I've made a decision, Ava. I'm not going to sit here and let them take everything I've worked for. I'm going to fight for it. She looked up at me, her expression a mix of surprise and relief. What are you going to do, Grandma? I'm going to make sure they can't touch a thing, I said firmly. I'm going to change my will, revoke any access they have to my finances, and make sure this house stays mine. If they want to take it, they'll have to go through me first. Ava stared at me for a moment, her eyes wide. Grandma, you don't have to do this alone. You don't have to fight them by yourself. I smiled, a genuine smile this time, full of the strength I hadn't realized I still had. I'm not alone, Ava. I have you now. The next morning, after Ava had left, I wasted no time. I picked up the phone and called my lawyer, Michelle. She answered after the first ring, as always. Millie Carter, she said, her voice warm but professional. It's been a while. What's going on? I need your help, I said without hesitation. I need to update my will. I need to make sure Jack and Rachel can't touch anything. She didn't ask any questions. She knew me well enough to know that when I called it was serious. Of course, I'll be over this afternoon. I spent the rest of the day gathering the paperwork. The deeds, the bank accounts, the insurance policies, everything I needed to protect what was mine. I couldn't afford to wait any longer. I couldn't sit by and let them take everything without a fight. By the time Michelle arrived, I had everything laid out on the kitchen table. She looked at me, the concern evident in her eyes, but I was resolute. We'll do everything by the book, she said as she sat down, flipping through the documents. I'll make sure everything is in order, Millie. No one will be able to touch anything. I nodded, relieved. This wasn't just about the house or the money. This was about respect. This was about showing Jack and Rachel that I wasn't a helpless old woman waiting to be put away. I was still here. I was still in control of my life. We spent the next 2 hours going over everything, updating my will, setting up a living trust, and revoking any power of attorney that Jack or Rachel had. It felt like I was taking back my life, piece by piece. When Michelle left, I felt a sense of peace I hadn't felt in years. But I knew this wasn't over. It was just the beginning. The days that followed were quiet, but there was a weight in the air. I could feel Jack and Rachel's eyes on me. I could feel the pressure building, but I was ready. I had done what I needed to do. It wasn't just about securing my house or my finances. It was about taking back my power, about standing tall in a world that had tried to push me down. I wasn't going anywhere, and neither was my home, but there was one more thing I needed to do before I could truly let go of the past. I pulled out a piece of paper and began to write a letter to myself. The following morning, as I sat in my usual chair, the one near the window where the sunlight streamed in, I found myself reflecting on everything that had happened. It was strange how quickly things could change, how life could move from quiet routine to a battle for your own dignity. I didn't know what the future would hold, but I knew one thing for sure. I wouldn't let it happen quietly. I wouldn't let them take everything from me, from my home, from my memories, without a fight. There was still so much to do, so many pieces to put into place, but for the first time in what felt like years, I felt in control again. I pulled a piece of paper from my drawer, the same drawer where I kept the important things, the financial documents, the deeds, the keys to my life. The pen felt heavier in my hand as I began to write. I needed to write a letter, not to Jack, not to Rachel, but to myself, a reminder of who I was before they tried to erase me, a reminder of the strength I had when I needed it most. Dear Mildred, I know you are tired, and I know it feels like the world has forgotten you, but I want you to remember something. You are not what they called you. You are not a burden, you are not too old, and you are certainly not invisible. You are the root, the keeper of stories, the woman who raised a son, who loved deeply, and who survived. There was a time when you felt small, when you let them push you into the background, but you have to remember who you were before all of that. Remember how you fought for your family, how you fought for yourself. You still have that fire in you. They may think they've worn you down, but they've only made you stronger. Don't let them rewrite your story. You've lived through too much to let someone else decide your fate. You are not done yet. You have more to give, more to show, more to fight for. I paused, reading the words over and over again. The weight of them settled on me, filling the empty spaces I'd been trying to ignore for so long. I wasn't just writing to remind myself of who I had been, I was reminding myself of who I still was, and I wasn't going to fade away quietly. I folded the letter carefully, and placed it back in the drawer, where it would remain, just for me. A part of my story, that no one could take. It wasn't long before the quiet in the house grew unbearable. I had made my decision, I had sealed my will, and now I had to wait. Jack had called once, but I didn't pick up. There was nothing left to say. The finality of it all was heavy, but it was necessary. I couldn't let them manipulate me any longer. I couldn't let them walk all over me, as if I was nothing more than a piece of property. And then one afternoon, I heard the familiar sound of a car engine rumbling outside. At first I thought it was just another car passing by, but then it slowed down. I looked out the window, and saw a car I recognized. Jack's old sedan. He was here. I felt a strange mix of anger and sadness. He hadn't called. He hadn't apologized. He hadn't even bothered to explain himself. He had just driven up to my house like it was still his, like everything was fine, but it wasn't fine. Not anymore. I stood at the window, watching him get out of the car. He looked smaller than I remembered. His shoulders were slumped, his face tired. There was no confidence in his stride. It was the walk of someone who knew they had wronged someone, and wasn't sure how to make it right. The doorbell rang. I took a deep breath, smoothing my blouse, and walked to the door. When I opened it, there he was. My son, standing on the doorstep like nothing had happened. "May," he said softly, looking up at me, with those eyes that used to be full of warmth. "Can we talk?" I looked at him, taking a step back so he could come in, but I didn't say anything. I didn't know if I had the strength to talk to him just yet. I had spent years being the one who held everything together. Now, I was the one who needed answers. He stepped inside, his hands in his pockets, as if he were unsure of what to do with himself. He took a long look around the house, at the things he used to touch, the things he used to love. "Mom," he started again, his voice softer this time. "I know you're upset. I just want to explain." I crossed my arms, waiting. I had heard enough excuses. "I don't need explanations, Jack," I said, my voice calm but firm. "I need honesty, and I need you to understand what you've done. This wasn't just about the house. This wasn't just about me getting older. This was about respect, and you didn't give me that." He shifted uncomfortably. "I didn't mean for it to happen like this, Mom. I thought it was for the best. Rachel and I both thought." I cut him off, raising my hand. "Stop. Don't try to put this on her. This was your decision, Jack. You signed the papers. You made the calls. You didn't even give me a chance to speak." His face reddened, and I could see the guilt washing over him. "I'm sorry, Mom. I didn't know how to handle it. I didn't want to lose you. but I thought this would make everything easier. I shook my head. You don't get to decide what's easier for me. I'm not a child, Jack. I'm your mother, and I deserve more than to be quietly shipped off to a place I never asked for. For a moment there was silence, and then he spoke again, his voice cracking. I didn't know how to fix it. I didn't know how to make things right. I don't want to lose you, Mom. I was scared. The vulnerability in his voice hit me harder than I expected. I had spent so much time being angry, so much time feeling betrayed, that I hadn't allowed myself to see the fear in his eyes. The fear that came with growing up, and watching the people you love get older, change, fade. I took a deep breath, feeling a weight lift off my chest. Jack, you didn't lose me, but you almost lost me, and that's what I can't forgive. I watched him nod, his eyes filled with regret. But something had shifted. He wasn't the man I had raised anymore, but I could see the potential in him to be better. I'm going to make this right, he said quietly. I'll fix it. I promise. I didn't answer him right away. But I didn't have to. The truth was, I wasn't sure if I could ever fully forgive him, but I was willing to give him a chance. For me, for him, and for Ava. Days passed, and life slowly began to settle into a new rhythm. Jack and I didn't speak much, but there were no more lies, no more secrets. We spent time together, fixing the things that had broken in our relationship, one small step at a time. I spent my days tending to the garden, baking, and making sure my house remained my own. And as the months went by, I felt more and more at peace, but I didn't know what the future would hold. But for the first time in a long time, I felt like I had a say in it. Ava came to visit more often, and we spent time talking, laughing, and making memories. I had always wanted her to see me as more than just a grandmother, and now, I felt like she truly understood me. One morning, as I stood at the window looking out at the neighborhood, I realized that I had reclaimed my life. I wasn't a forgotten woman. I wasn't a burden. I was a survivor. That I had faced my fears, fought for what was mine, and come out stronger. And now, it was my turn to show the world that I was still here, still fighting, still living. Months later, I wrote my memoirs, just as I had planned. I titled it The Day I Was Supposed to Disappear, because that was the day I truly began to reclaim my life. It wasn't just about the betrayal, or the plans they made for me. It was about remembering who I was before they tried to erase me, and I made sure the world knew. Ava read the manuscript before anyone else, her eyes full of pride, as she flipped through the pages. She was part of my story, and I was part of hers. Together we were writing a new chapter. As for Jack and Rachel, they still came around. But things were different now. We had all learned what it meant to respect each other, and I knew, deep down, that no matter what the future held, I would never be erased again.